everybody, and welcome back to the Movie-Club Emporium. And it is time again. It's that time of year for our second annual summer block party. And last year was a big one. We took an Italian vacation through some insane Italian horror films. This summer, guys, let me tell you something. I live in western Oklahoma, and it is, how should I put this? Hot as balls here all the time this summer. It's been weirdly not temperature wise hot, but humidity has been something to behold. And quite frankly, I don't want to go outside. And so I thought, what better theme for this year's summer block party than to let you know now that it is Staycation 2025, baby. And so this year's block party is going to be fun because we have 5 weeks to cover. And we're going to be watching movies that will, by the end, will let you know that you shouldn't really go anywhere outside of your home. First up, this week's review is over the film Campfire Tales. Why you shouldn't go riding around with your friends or sitting around a campfire. Campfire Tales from 1997 is a horror anthology that was, I think it got maybe released. I don't think it ever got theatrically released. I believe it was like a HBO or Showtime, and definitely it feels that way in its cinematography and the way it's shot. Written and directed by Matt Cooper, Martin Kunert, and David Samuel. With a pretty big cast. You've got James Marsden, Amy Smart, Christopher Masterson, Christine Taylor Lauren from all my Hey Dude friends out there, as well as several other that will pop up throughout these stories. And I'm going to kind of do this as we go through most anthologies around here. We're going to break it down story by story, starting with our wraparound, and that is called The Campfire. Most of the names I mentioned just a while ago are the ones that are in this segment, and it's about four friends are driving around in a 1997 red soft top Ford Mustang, as only the coolest of people did in 1997. And their friend is like, you know what's really fun and what makes me look super cool, besides this giant oversized jacket that I'm wearing because, again, it's 1997, it's just driving like a maniac on these wild mountain roads. They're in an auto accident, and they're all pretty banged up but alive. And so while they're waiting for the police or somebody to come, they find this old, weird, abandoned, like burned down church, like you do, and decide to build a fire and tell scary stories. And so we go through the stories, and they're all based on urban legends, some more famous than others. And I would say spoilers for a almost 30-year-old movie. But if you've seen one anthology like this, you've seen them all. They've been dead the whole time. Except for the main driver, because that's the one who never gets it. He is in purgatory, and all his friends are ghosts. Which is weird to be telling scary stories to your ghost friends. I mean, I feel like if anybody should be like, yeah, we get it already, it would be the ghosts. But that's the wraparound story. Our first is not even really a story per se. I mean, it's a story, but it's kind of the opening of the film, and it's honestly the best part because it's the most like artistically done. And that is this little bit of the hook. This is the part that has James Marsden and Amy Smart in it, and it's cool because it's filmed in black and white. They're having it take place during the 50s. And a couple of kids that make out point, crazed murderer with a hook hand, and I mean, if you know the story, you know the story. Hook at the end of the story, that Hook is stuck in the passenger door. But then again, it's the most kind of cool because it's the most like not cookie cutter, because a lot of this feels like and it's shot like episodes of Tales from the Crypt, um, including the one next story that has like kind of hilarious and unnecessary nudity in it. It definitely feels like Tales from the Crypt, and that is the honeymoon. This was not a urban legend I'm familiar with, but a newlywed couple, Ron Livingston and the actress's name I do not recall, are driving a giant RV across country, um, because for their honeymoon, he wants to take her to see this place where a bunch of people were stuck for the winter and had to cannibalize each other, all the Donner Party, because nothing says let's start our life together than survivalist cannibalism. I will say this: I'm not usually a big like nostalgia guy. Like I don't have that. Oh man! Uh, aside from two things, and they're both vehicles, and which is weird because I'm not the vehicle guy. One of those like luxury big body vans that everybody's like rich mother had, like the ones with like the big captain seats and it had a TV inside of it, and the back laid down into a bed, and they were just like the peak of just like weird excess in minivan form. Those I've recently fallen in love with those. But the other one is just a 1990s recreational vehicle. The look of this thing, with all its cabinets and disgusting carpet, and that weird time in our lives when all of our collective uh, design ideas involve like dark green and like a rosy pink, dark pink, and just flower and leaves everywhere. It was disgusting. Don't let them lie to you. The 90s were not Saved by the Bell. The 90s were Saved by the Bell like the 80s were Stranger Things. No, the 90s were disgusting colors and kitchens filled with either ducks or fat Italian statues. And that was it. And this is the story they break down, and there's a legend about crow people. I'm not familiar with crow people, and they are attacked. He goes off and is promptly dispatched of, leaving her to try to fight off these creature attacks. And you hear them like stumbling around and like scraping, and you know where I'm going. They're scraping on the roof. Only for her to survive the night. Only for when the cops pull her out of the RV to see her, newly. Now she's one. I don't say her newly married, but now her recently widowed husband's body hanging upside down above the RV, and his wedding ring scratching the roof as he slowly sways in the breeze. This one's fun. Again, it's this one definitely is the most like a Tales from the Crypt episode because it's like weird comedy, um, the like unnecessary aggressive, like sex scenes in it, and scenes because this is like a 10-minute short and there are a couple of sex scenes in it. Um, but the effects looks good. And so it is definitely fun. Then we get to the story that, honestly, I feel like is probably the most well known of all of these stories. However, their take on it, I think, is what makes this movie. Because I remember watching this, going, like, why? The '90s were a kind of a revival time for anthologies. They were big in the '80s, Creep Show, Twilight Zone the movie, things like that. But the '90s saw kind of a revival with Tales from the Hood and other films, and so I'm curious what Grim Fairy Tales or Grim Prairie Tales. I was just curious, like, why this one doesn't really kind of get the attention. And then the next story comes up, and I feel like their approach to this one is kind of why. And it's the story is titled "People Can Lick Too." And already my skin's crawling thinking about it, because this is, like, again, this is the most famous of the ones that I know, and it is the grossest of urban legends. Um, and it's about a young girl, and to me, that's the problem with this one, is we scale, I think, too young. Um, because when you watch a scary movie and weird things are happening to, like, adults, or adults pretending to be 18 years old when they're clearly like my age now, that's fine. You kind of let that stuff slide. But when it's like a legit like child, and probably the grossest like urban legend there um, is kind of like it gives you like serious. This segment gives you like serious Megan is Missing / Strangeland vibes, because it's also very much like the dangers of the internet. Um, because two things we were really afraid of in the 90s were clothes that fit and AOL Instant Messenger. And so the dangers of the internet, because you didn't know who you're talking to. And so this girl is talking to this creature. And I say creature because they filmed this guy. Like, he films him like David Lynch films Bob in the Twin Peaks series. Like, he's just utterly horrifying. This weird, lanky, shirtless, stringy, gray-haired beast man who's just like, kids, And he goes to her house with a pair of pruning shears, and disposes of her dog, which automatically, no. But then we cut to a scene where she looks in the mirror and you actually see like him like, ugh. It's gross. It's easily the most terrifying and memorable thing about this particular anthology, but it is 100% why this movie is not well known and not well reviewed. So look up the story. I'm not going to repeat. You know the story that people can like to. And if you don't, good luck reading it tonight and then going to bed. And then lastly is one that I feel like, honestly, I think is kind of an episode. It feels like an episode of, like a previous episode of Tales from the Crypt. Because it is The Locket. And this is the one that stars, I don't know the actor's name. He was Mark in Roseanne. And he's decided to ride his motorcycle across country to this wild, like, knockoff John Cougar Mellencamp soundtrack. And his motorcycle breaks down outside of a farmhouse, and then it begins to rain. And he goes to the farmhouse, and at first it's empty, and then there's a beautiful young woman who doesn't speak. She cannot speak, but she lets him in. And over the course of like an hour and a half, they fall madly in love. And so she goes to him in the night, and she's wearing this weird like tight ribbon around her neck. And when he goes to remove it, she freaks out because, again, spoilers, she's a ghost, and her father axed her, and then disposed of himself by jumping feet first down the well, and now his ghost comes back and does it every night. But he's able to stop that ghost, and he takes her with him, and they're going to escape together, and everything's great until she's laying in his lap, sleeping, enjoying the sun, and being free of the nightly deaths that happen to her. And he can't help himself, and he removes that ribbon, and her head promptly falls off into his lap, and it's kind of hilarious. It definitely gives kind of the gargoyle story from Tales from the Dark Side vibe. I think this may be the. I don't know if it's true. I think weirdly enough, I think the People Can Lick 2 is the shortest story because we are rushing through that bad boy. This one may be the most drawn out, which is weird because it's also kind of the most boring. But yeah, this is a weird, little lost anthology film from the 90s. And I know at some point Nick and I are going to talk about anthology films in great detail because we're both huge fans of them. And I was very curious why this one I had never seen. You know, after having watched it, I get it. But I will say there are some fun little trinkets sprinkled throughout. Overall, it's not a great anthology. It's not a great film. But if nothing else, it helps you, especially with this particular month. Stay away from guys who try to be cool by driving like maniacs. You don't need to be out there. Driving in the woods? What are we doing? And that's coming from somebody who's done some of that. Not driving, but like riding along in cars that don't do that. And realize that if you're in an accident, everybody comes out unscathed, and then your first thought is to sit around and tell scary stories, you're probably all dead. Which is why you should stay home. Stay home. And join me next week where we talk about the dangers of being on boats, especially if there's a wild Billy Zane roaming the ocean, because we're talking about dead calm. So until next week, where we talk about boats and hoes and Australians and whatever else is going to happen in that movie, I've been Jason, and I will make sure you, the YouTube stuff, like, subscribe. Get us to 50 subscribers. We want to go live here on YouTube. And if you do so, at the end of this month, our live hangout is about good and bad horror remakes. And you're going to want to see that. So make sure you sharing us with your friends, like the video, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.